Hey guys, so I'm sitting at the table saving seeds from the Ethiopian kale that I grew over the winter. The plant I had this year was actually a volunteer. The last 2 years they've actually volunteered in my yard. Before that I had started it from seed that was given to me. So when I saved the seed pods, I let them dry on the plant and I put them in a mason jar, and I'd opened some of the seed pods, so there were already some seeds in the bottom of the jar, but I've been sitting here sorting the seed pods to see which ones had already opened and which ones like this were still closed and had the seeds in them. So I had them in a mason jar, and I was sitting here doing it for a while, and I was like, you know what? Let me share this with you guys. So when they dried on the plant, pulled them off, put them in the mason jar, and then I have just a little styrofoam cup that I've been cracking the seeds open and putting them in, and then I have a little container that I saved, and I have it labeled, and this is from a couple years. So from 2019 and 2020 Ethiopian kale seeds. So that I'll have plenty for next year. So they grow over the cool season. So in Florida, it's something that we plant in the fall and grows through to the spring. Usually as soon as it warms up, the very beginning of our spring. So March, usually by the time March comes, they're flowering. They send up, they go to seed, they send up these tall shoots with yellow flowers, and then when the flowers get pollinated, they produce these seed pods. So I'm going to crack one open for you just to see how I do it. Basically free seeds, because they were given to me originally, and then they volunteered the last 2 years, so I've never had to pay for these seeds, which is awesome. And they grow really good. It's a big kale plant that to me is similar to collard greens. It's not the exact same thing, but they cook up. So when I split it open, you get two sides. So now this is hollow. I'm throwing that in the trash, or you could put it in your compost. And then there's like this where the stem the stem of the seed pod is. There's like a little divider in the middle of the seed pod. So I pull that, losing light, there we go. When I pull that off, you can see it opens it up. And a lot of the seeds will drop out, so that doesn't have anything on either side. I just check to make sure there's still, one seed in there. I don't want to lose that, so I just make sure that I catch it in my cup, throw it away. And I have these seeds. Once I finish going through the rest of these seed pods, then I'm going to put them all in my little container that I have here. So it'll be more than enough for next year and to share. If anybody wants to try a few seeds in the fall, let me know. I also wanted to share a couple things with you. One is my garden journal. So it's just a composition book that I've had for a couple years, and I make notes in it. So if I get ideas, plans, my goals for the season or the year in the garden, I even have some prayers in here. And I'll a lot of times just journal what I've done each day, like the dates that I start seeds, what varieties I started. A lot of times I'll note germination. Like sometimes I'll put down, when I've applied fertilizer, just different projects. Sometimes I make to-do lists. These are this is an example of one of the lists. The light keeps fluctuating. But anyway, there we go. So things that I can be self-sufficient in. So at the time, greens, because I grow my own kale, different varieties of kale, and I use that for salads and for cooking. And then I've also grown my own collard greens. I've even had some tropical spinaches, not true spinaches, but like Okinawan spinach and longevity spinach. They just weren't my favorite thing. It was kind of thing if like there was a bad situation where I had to survive off of my backyard, I would eat those greens, but they're just not my favorite. I ended up giving more of them away, just like cutting them back and giving what I cut back away, because they grew very well. They don't like frost, so if it freezes or if there's a frost, it'll kill those plants, but they always come back from the roots when I've trimmed the dead parts back. Anyway, peppers. I've been self-sufficient in some years, growing enough, and I know it's probably backwards for you guys, but peppers, I've grown enough in previous years and freezed whatever peppers I wasn't going to use right then. I would chop them up and freeze them and use them in cooking until, I got peppers again the next season. And here in Northeast Florida, Zone 9, our peppers are really perennials. So I've had like jalapeno plants that I had for like 3 or 4 years that would, produce throughout the year. They'd slow down during our extremes, like during the extreme heat. And in the extreme cold, they'd slow down, but in between, they would, produce peppers over and over again and never even die. They would, stay green with leaves throughout the year. I have had pepper plants that appeared to be dead and then came back, when it warmed back up in the spring. They grew new leaves and started flowering and producing again. But I want to produce even more peppers because now not only do I like to freeze them, to have them for recipes throughout the year, but I also like to pickle them, make pickled sweet peppers, pickled jalapenos, salsas, all that. Next I had herbs, rosemary, thyme, and oregano. A lot of people say they can't kill oregano, but oregano died for me. It didn't last through the winter my first year growing it. I have some dried still from when I grew it, and then thyme, I have the same thyme plant that I've had for a few years, and it's always more than enough. And then my rosemary, I had a big rosemary bush, but it recently died when it got ripped up when we were redoing my garden. But that's okay because I've given so much dried rosemary as gifts over the last few years, and I've saved enough for myself that I have enough dried rosemary to last me a while. So I will get a new plant. I've been told to cut back the rosemary bush that died and cut it out of the fabric pot it's in and plant it in a permanent place and kind of baby it, and it'll grow back. But it's not the biggest of my priorities, but just because I have plenty of rosemary and I know that it will grow so well when I do plant it again, I'm not that worried about it. But herbs are an easy thing for you to be self-sufficient in, for you to grow your own and save a lot of money, because a lot of herbs are perennials. And then basil, like you can get at the dollar store, you can usually get like a 25-cent pack, or even Walmart, like a 20 or 25-cent pack of basil seeds, and grow more than enough basil for yourself. So just in, probably like 10 plants gave me well over a year's supply of dried basil, maybe a 2-year or more supply of dried basil. You could also give that away as gifts. And then I also made fresh pesto. Well, it wasn't fresh when I made it. And then I froze it in small little like snack size Ziploc bags and froze it, and that's enough to make. I made homemade pizza with pesto on it, or if you want like a pesto pasta salad or some warm pasta tossed in pesto, it's enough for that. Okra is another thing that I want to be self-sufficient in. So last year I only had like 7 plants, and it was before I gave in and started using synthetic fertilizer. I was still trying to stick with the organic fertilizers, and it just wasn't growing very well. So, but I've since given in and realized, hey, if I really want to grow my own food and I'm working with soil, that hasn't been gardened before, while I'm, building up the soil and working on, adding different amendments to increase its nutrition, I will in the meantime use synthetic fertilizers because I want to grow food. So okra, I'm going to try again today this year with even more plants and 2 different varieties, which I'll get to those varieties in the next week or so, because I'm going to be planting okra pretty soon. And then berries, blueberries, mulberries, a lot of people are able to be self-sufficient, and I haven't been successful in growing my own blueberry bushes. I've bought blueberry bushes, and then they would end up getting ran over with the lawnmower, which is unfortunate. But when I have teenage boys helping me with my yard work, they were kind of careless about it. And then I have a mulberry plant that's like a native species mulberry plant that grows little berries. And I've had it for a few years. I've only got like a couple berries off of it just because it's still pretty small and the birds usually beat me to it. And then sweet potatoes. I've grown my own sweet potatoes. Hasn't been enough to last a year, but it's been enough, to have sweet potatoes here and there. Another, besides peppers for canning and freezing, I also want to grow enough cayenne pepper this year to make my own red pepper flakes to last me for a while so that I don't have to buy those from the store. So, and then, I have little sayings. If I find a saying that sticks with me, like gardening, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. It's all right, when I come across little sayings, I'll put those in here. Seed starting tips. This is another one that says, to plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow, by Aubrey Hepburn. So sometimes I've watched YouTube videos and written down notes, garden plans. I'm one of those people that like to make lists, and then if I forget something and I want to go back and see what I did or when I did it, I can refer back to it. So I've been keeping this for a few years. Let's see. I have found some trellis design ideas that I drew out. So this is for a trellis with bamboo stakes that you could use to grow peas or pole beans up. That's at least what I would grow up at and have grown up at, especially the southern peas. I like the purple hull peas because it's easy for me to tell when to harvest them because the pod turns purple. So when I've grown black-eyed peas, it's like it would go from like being ready to being dried so quick that a lot of times I would miss them, which dried black-eyed peas are okay, but I like to freeze them fresh versus having them dried. I like the way that they taste better that way. And anyway, that's my garden journal I've wanted to share with you, and I had it out because I've been updating it, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to show you guys. Next, I have some seeds that I'm getting ready to plant. Probably today when I go out there in my garden, I'll take you guys with me and show you what I have growing on. But I'm going to plant some zinnias. This is a packet that I have left over from last year that has a few seeds in it, so I'm going to plant these along the garden fence in front of it. So to add some beauty. I love flowers, so pretty zinnias, and those are mixed colors, mixed varieties. Well, it's early bird variety, but mixed color assortment. And then for my cucumbers, I've grown national pickling in the past. So you can see cheapo, 4 for $1. This only has just like 3 seeds in it, which is enough for me for one hill, if you want to call it hill, of cucumbers. And then I'm trying some new varieties I haven't grown before. This is another cheapo seed packet. This is called Muncher, which is a slicing cucumber that I had never heard of before. And I assumed with it saying Muncher that it would be like a pickling size cucumber, but it's actually considered a slicer. So that'll be interesting to try to grow this year. And then lemon cucumbers. I've always wanted to try to grow these, so I finally got some seeds this year. And so as soon as they're ripe, they turn yellow, so you know when to pick them, and they're like a, ball, globe-sized, round cucumber, which is interesting, and I think will be awesome in pickles or cucumber salads. So I'm really looking forward to the lemon cucumber this year. And I've never grown white cucumbers before, but according to the seed pack and what I've seen online, these white cucumbers tend to do well in high heat. So that sounds like a good variety for Florida because it gets super hot. It's already like 80, probably maybe 90 degrees today for the high. It was in the 80s already by noon today. So this is White Wonder. So I'm looking forward to this one also. This is also a slicing cucumber, but I'll pickle slicing cucumbers because I don't care. They come out just as good to me. All right, so those are my cucumber varieties. Thank you for joining me, and I will meet you outside in the garden later.